Welcome to Elliott's PT podcast. I'm here to help you find your balance and live your best life guilt-free. I don't believe there is a one-size-fits-all approach for health and fitness. We're all different and we need to find out what works for us. I'm passionate about helping people make realistic, long-term lifestyle changes that they will stick to and they will take with them forever. I don't believe in crazy diets or short-term fixes. We all need to live and find a perfect balance in diet and exercise that suits our individual needs. I want to help you find your exercise mojo, feel great and achieve wonderful things. Here is Elliott's PT podcast by Renae Elliott. Hello, and welcome back to Elliott's PT podcast. So today we are talking about the things that you should be considering first before you are returning to exercise after the birth of your baby. Now, returning to exercise is something that most of us, people who really like exercise, are ready to do after we've had a baby. I know myself, I could not wait to be able to do some of the exercises that I could do before I had babies. As you've probably heard me say before, running was something that I so desperately wanted to get back into, and I couldn't wait to be able to do that. But that was not something that I could do straight away. Things needed to be done and put into place first before I was able to run. The other day, I had a friend, and she was telling me how she was in a gym, and she's in her local gym, and she was in a local gym, and there was all these mums there, and they had newborn babies. They had their babies with them, and they were doing all these certain exercises, which she knew because I had trained her after she had her babies, were going to just do more damage to their bodies. And that they were doing certain jumping exercises, and they were doing like lifting heavy weights, having the weights over their head, and all of these things. They were doing all of that stuff, and they were also then laughing about the exercises that they were doing and how they were going to have to run to the toilet after and how it was going to make them wet themselves. But they all thought this was normal. And she was amazing in that she went up and actually said something to them, and they just kind of looked at her weirdly and didn't say anything. She was shocked, as in the trainer was letting all this stuff happen as well. And again, the trainer wasn't saying anything. So I really feel like it's my job to get the message out there as much as I can as to what you should consider before returning to exercise. Now, we don't just go back... we don't just go back to normal straight away after we have. Our bodies don't go back to normal straight away after we have a baby. As much as we would like for that to happen, it doesn't happen. The structural and the hormonal changes that happen during our body, they don't just disappear as soon as you give birth. And overdoing it if you overdo exercise after you've had your baby, it can result in lots of problems. So it's really important to know the facts before you get started. So some problems it could cause is leakage. Leakage in the of urine and also feces, pelvic discomfort, joint pain, and more serious injuries. So it's really, really important to understand what some things you need to consider when you are returning to exercise. The first thing I want people to understand is that what you did before you had a baby, you will get back there, but you cannot get back there straight away. So if you were lifting weights, if you were lifting, say, 10 kilo weights, 20 kilo weights, and whatever exercises you were doing, you can't have your baby and expect that straight away you'll be able to do that weight, because it takes time. It took 9 months for you to grow your baby in your tummy. It took 9 months, and your body has gone over significant changes during that period of time. You are not going to snap back straight away. As much as we see those things in the media, it is not true. I remember when I had Charlie, a celebrity had a baby. I think it was Khloe Kardashian. She had a baby around the same time, and within, I think we had babies like weeks between each other, and within a few weeks she was already posting these photos of her body, and I just knew it was so unrealistic and not true, and it made me angry. It did make me angry for me because I knew the process that needed to be done and I was happy to do it, but it made me angry for other people that would have been having babies around the same time and would have thought that they weren't good enough because they didn't look the same or they didn't snap back the way that she did. And I just think that she snapped back either because who knows how she's did what she did. But there's also a lot of photoshopping and all that stuff going on, and we all know that. So it's really important to start to understand that you and trust me, you will, if you do the things right when you start off with now, you will become stronger than what you ever have come before. But if you miss these vital steps, which is what I see so many people doing, you miss these vital steps, then that's how we end up with problems. And you won't get to where you were. You will actually, you won't get to where you were, or you'll end up really injuring yourself. And I have trained so many mums with older kids that have had years of injuries, not feeling good about themselves, not being able to do things, trying to push through exercises because they thought that's just what they had to do. And all they needed to do was spend this bit of time from when you had your baby just to rebuild your core strength and really, really focus on getting as strong as you can in that area. Because once we get the deep core muscles as strong as possible, everything else falls into place. And I just see so many people missing this step because, do you know what? We all, if there's an exercise that you like doing, you might like lifting heavy weights, or you might like running, or you might like HIIT classes, all of those things. We all love those things. But this more slower work is vital for being as strong as you can in the other things that you really love. So please don't miss that step. So I'll explain more about that after. So it is really important to, if you are wanting to return back to exercise, I want you to consider, there is a rough guideline of how long you should wait before you can return back to exercise. There is, I guess it's a bit of a myth to say that you can return back after 6 weeks. So I know for me, when I had my 6-week checkup, I said, am I fine to return back to exercise? And the doctor said, yeah, fine. She had no idea. Now I knew where I was at. I knew where my pelvic floor was at. I knew I had a very clear understanding, but the doctor just said, yes, fine. And lots of people see that as a tick. They go, yep, that's done. She said it's fine. Now the doctor did not check I had stitches. She did not check. She did, but only after I asked her to. She did not check my stomach for a separation. She did not ask me how my pelvic floor was. She asked me nothing. I went for my daughter's 6-week checkup, and then I said, what about me? So I had to be asking these questions. And some people would go, okay, the doctor said it's fine, and then move straight into exercise. It is not fine. So we are not suddenly reach the 6-week mark and then you're suddenly good to go and you can go back to running or you can go back to doing all the other things. It takes time to heal. I'm not saying don't exercise, but I'm saying make sure that you are doing the right sort of exercises. Now, I, again, train a lot of mums and they come to me, especially mums with new babies, and I'll say, have you had your pelvic floor checked? No. So they haven't had their pelvic floor checked. Or then I'll ask them, have they ever had their tummies checked for a separation? And again, some people say yes, some people say no. So they are the first two things that I would make sure that you get done after you have your baby. Whether you ask for the check in the hospital or you go and see a pelvic floor specialist and get yourself checked. Now, the best way to get checked is to have an internal. And I know after you have babies, the last thing that we want is to have something else stuck up there. But it needs to happen. It is so important. So go and make sure that you've had those things checked. If you have a tummy separation, you need to exercise differently, okay? We need to exercise differently because we need to fix that separation. Now, I have had mums that have had 7-finger separations and I've been able to bring them back together, and but we had to do specific work in order to do so. And it is daily work. And that is why I have a program that is specifically designed to fit in the exercises that are safe for you during this period. So so you need to be able to have your stomach separation checked. Any more than 3 fingers is classed as a dissecting recti, which means you really need to train differently. But we also still need to consider, if you're between 1 to 3 fingers, you need to consider, or 1 to 2 fingers, you need to consider how you train, because we still need to bring that in. Now, I want this to get out to everybody because, again, I have mums that are in their 50s, their kids are grown up and they never had this stuff checked. When they restart exercising or they start a new exercise program, people don't think to ask them, which I try to ask everybody, regardless of how old your kids are. And so when people go, no, my kids are old, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, no, it does matter. Because what did you do after you had babies? Did you spend the time to really work on this? Because if you didn't, we need to go back to the start again. And that's not bad, but this is what I need you to consider. When we don't fix that core, so if we don't build, so when you are pregnant, depending on your, how big you grow, depending on your height. So people that are shorter are going to tend to have to go out further to fit the baby in. So they might have a bigger risk of having a bigger separation. Your tummy, people that are taller might carry differently. So your tummy has to separate in order to allow room for the baby to grow, which is normal. We have to do that. And then after you have your baby, that we want the tummy to come back in, but it doesn't always come back together. So that is in the case, we have, that's called, if there's any more than 3 fingers, it's called dissected recti. You need to have that checked. If you have a tummy separation, if you have just had your baby, regardless of where your tummy is at, you still need to work on your deep core and get that as strong as possible. So you are not okay to go back to your exercises straight away after you have your baby. So these things need to be considered. And then we need to slowly start steadily increase your exercise. So, can just depending on what you've done before, depending on where you're at, everything is individual to you, but slowly start increasing your exercise and understand that where you were before, you will get back to, but it took 9 months to grow the baby. So it is going to take time to get your strength back. When I first came home from hospital from having Charlie, I could not walk up the street. I had, my birth was very quick and I tore. So I had stitches, but I remember walking up the street and I could not walk up the street. I couldn't walk to the end I could walk to the end of the street and back, and that was enough for me. And that's all I could do. That was obviously the first few days after. And again, some people can't even do that. So you need to start. My second tip is about listening to your body. Your body is the best teacher ever. It will tell you so much, and we just need to be aware to start listening to our bodies. So I also was reading an article this morning about somebody that was in the gym, and they were in there 2 weeks after giving birth. And the trainer that they went to congratulating them for, well done for returning back to exercise well. And if someone came to me and said, I've had people before message me and say, how quickly can I come back? I've had members that I've trained all through their pregnancy, and they'll say, Renae, how quickly can I start? And I was like, you need to give yourself time, and you need to start listening to your body, because some people are ready earlier and some people it takes longer, and that is okay, because there's so many other circumstances that come into play in depending on how you feel and whether you can return, how soon you can return to exercise. But please don't feel that you need to rush back, okay? Because if you rush back too soon, you're going to end up giving yourself the risk of an injury or further problems. And the key is to really listen to your body and listen to the cues it's giving you. And that is it. Like I said, for the first few days, I could just walk down the end of my street and walk back, and that was far enough. I couldn't do anything else. When I had Charlie, I already had a toddler, so you had to consider lifting him up and down. I had natural birth, so I didn't have a C-section, but I had to consider those types of things as well, because it takes time. It takes time to recover. I remember and I'm sure that mums can associate with this. I remember having Cooper, my first son, and giving birth and looking down at my stomach and thinking, oh my God, what has happened to my stomach? It was flabby. It was just like hanging right down, like it felt to my knees. And I thought, oh my God, my body is ruined. And it's so not true. I didn't, I thought, oh my God, like it's not going to go back. It was a shock because, again, I'd never been through this before, but your body does recover. It just takes time. We don't snap back straight away. So really, really listen to your body and what it is telling you. Now, while we are juggling a newborn, you are trying to work out your new routine with your life. So whether it's the routine of, like if it's the case of a second baby, how to fit the second baby, or third or fourth, how to fit the additional child into your family life. If it's your first baby, then it's considering all the things you need to know for a first baby. So there is lots of things to consider. But things that exercise can be a massive help. For me, exercise was the one thing that kept me sane. That was a bit of me time. So exercise was really, really important to me. But I also understood all the other components that went into it. So when you have a newborn and you may be sleep deprived, you may feel like you are lacking energy and you're not eating well, and then you're adding the stress of exercise on top, and you're trying to maybe do classes that aren't right for you at that stage in your postpartum journey, you're just going to put more stress on your body and obviously lead to injuries. So it is important to consider the type of exercise that you're doing after you have birth. And, probably for the first 3 months, if not, you need to consider doing a more gentler class, because your body is still recovering. It's still, we have hormones kicking about till after 4 months. We still, if you're breastfeeding, that adds another layer of things. So you really need to consider the type of exercise you're doing. Now, my belief is you need to go to somebody that is postpartumly trained. So they need to be pre and postnatal. They need to be trained. I see people like my friend was saying the other day about this training, that they weren't, like adjusting any of the exercises the women that were doing or anything like that. That's just not on. So you need to go someone that knows what they're talking about. And really, I say that probably more than anything that it's probably somebody that has been through birth themselves, because I was trained before I had children, but I didn't truly understand what it was like until I had kids myself. So that's what I would urge you to check people's qualifications, and are they trained for pre and postnatal, because it is super important. Exercises need to be different. You cannot be the same in a group class situation. Straight after your birth, you cannot be doing the same exercises because it does need to be altered to suit you and where you're at, depending on your pelvic floor, depending on if you have an abdominal separation, depending on all these other factors. So it is something that I really, really urge you to consider, to make sure what's the type of training you're doing and who is the trainer doing the training. Very, very rarely am I asked what my qualifications are, which still shocks me. So I obviously have lots of pre and postnatal training and all of these things, but very rarely do I get asked what my training is. So it is really important, and it's really important to understand how the body works after pregnancy. The other thing that my next thing for you to consider is fueling your body correctly. So I see so many mums all the time that have their babies and they don't have enough time for them to eat. They are busy, they're juggling, this new demands of a new baby, getting used to the demands of a baby, and if they have other children, then they're juggling everything. And there's still a part of them that wants to be the old them and go back to that life as well. I remember being after I had Cooper, I remember training a class, and I remember like seeing somebody that was pregnant, and I was like, oh, I would prefer to be pregnant than what I am now with a newborn baby. Because obviously there is lots of stresses with a newborn baby, and it's new and it's scary and all those other things. So I really urge people to think about how they fuel their body. The first time that I got into understanding my macros was when I had Charlie, and I wanted to make sure that I wanted to breastfeed. I wanted to breastfeed as long as I could, and I wanted to make sure that I was fueling my body correctly because I understood how important it was. I also didn't like the baby weight that I had on me, and I wanted to get rid of that, but I knew that I needed to be really sensible about how I got rid of it. So that's why I really dug deep into fueling my body, and making sure that I had food first was most important, because when you are feeling good, you're high, the food controls everything. Food is what's going to help you give energy. It's going to help you with your breast milk. It's going to help you be more calm and all of those things. But when we are living off sugars, when we are living off, anything that we can get quickly, it's not going to be the best for our bodies. And it's going to have a knock-on effect in so many different ways. So really make sure that you are fueling your body correctly. When you are breastfeeding, you need to eat more for your milk supply. So that's important too. And lots of mums that I come across undereat. They'll have all day, and they might just pick at what they can find, and not really eat a proper meal. Maybe they eat one proper meal a day, but they might just pick all day, or they might just live off coffee. So it's really important to understand your food and really learn to fuel your body correctly. The food that you eat is going to help your body repair. It is going to help you lose the additional weight that you may have from pregnancy. It is going to, help you recover from your exercise, but also recover from birth and the other pregnancy and all those other things. So food is number one. It is so important, and it is something that people just say they don't have enough time for. They just don't take the time to make sure that they are fueling their bodies correctly. And it is so many mums don't put themselves first, and I see it all the time. But when you put yourself first, you are, number one, sending that message out to your kids that you are important and you need to put yourself first. And when you put yourself first and you do things that are good for you or that you enjoy, you will be better for it. You'll be a better mum. You will feel better. You won't be as irritable. You'll be fueling your body correctly. It is so, 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 so important. So make sure that you are fueling your body correctly. You need to eat you need to eat extra food. It's maybe 300 or 400 calories. Again, it's all depending the situation. It's all of the situation you're in, but maybe 300 or 400 extra calories to support breastfeeding. So that's really, really important. And you obviously, if you are eating poorly, then that is possibly going to affect your milk supply, and we don't want that at all. So I really urge you to learn to understand your food. And the same thing is, people feel, I understand it because I was in the same position. I understand that we want to our bodies to be how it was previously and all of those other things, and it is all very, very possible. But learning to fuel your body correctly and learning how to eat the right food is the one thing that's really, really going to help with that. And when you understand how to feed your body properly, eat the right foods, then everything else is going to fall into place a lot easier. Now, the thing that I tell all my mums that I have is to understand that your body is going to hold on to weight for about 6 months after you've had babies. So if you are someone like me, I was told by all my friends, and there was all these comments that if you breastfeed, you will lose weight. So I had so many people saying, yes, I breastfed, and I was the skinniest that I ever was after I had babies, blah, blah. That's what I was told. And I remember thinking, oh, right, I will breastfeed because I want to make sure that, you know, I lose a baby weight. And that is something that did not happen for me. So people might experience that, but I was somebody that did not lose all my additional baby weight until I stopped feeding. So that is how it went for me, which again is fine. I had no problem with that. Breastfeeding was something I really enjoyed, and I was really felt privileged that I could do it. So I had no issues with that. The thing that I also understood was that so your body is going to hold on to weight for about 6 months after 6 months after birth. And the reason it's doing this is because it's actually a survival mechanism. So our bodies are so amazing how they do so many different things to cope with or to help us. So one muscle stops working, the other muscle tries to take over. You know, so your body will hold on to weight in case we go into a famine. So if we go into a famine, it is going to, you're going to have an additional fat on you, so you'll be able to keep up your milk supply. So how amazing is that? So also understanding that it can take longer to lose the weight that you have on you. Now, what I believe and what I've seen happen with so many people that I've trained is when you start getting these good habits in place. So, you know, you get the habits of understanding your food properly and learning to fuel your body correctly and making sure that you're eating the good food, you know, like food that's going to work for you, give you energy, support your body in what it needs. When you make sure that you are doing those things right, when the time comes that our hormones level out more and all of those other things, everything will fall into place because you've got all these right things working in the background. But if you don't get your food right, if you ignore your food and don't worry about it and you eat here and there and you're not fueling your body correctly, when it comes to that time of our hormones change and then you've got to start by learning all this other stuff still. So really see food as an important thing to understand in order to make sure you're fueling your body correctly for your energy levels, for yourself. If you are someone that breastfeeds, fueling it to be able to feed, but get the good habits in place. So then when the time comes that we are not as hormonally challenged as what we are straight after birth, all the right things fall into place. And it's really important to understand that it does take longer, because when the right time comes, I guess as the time's coming, you don't feel like, well, this should be working now, because it takes time. And I didn't know about the 6 month thing until I had Charlie. So I remember thinking, people, why do I see all these women snapping back and it's not happening to me? Why do I see and why did my friends tell me that they had their bodies, had lost weight after birth and they were breastfeeding and they were skinnier than what they were. I remember my friend saying she was skinnier than what she was at her wedding, breastfeeding, and that certainly did not happen to me. And but that was okay. I was totally fine with that because I understood that there was a process, and I think it's really important for women to understand there is a process. It is really important to give your pelvic floor some serious love after you've had a baby. Now, regardless of what type of birth you've had, your pelvic floor can still there's a myth. You see lots of people saying, oh, well, I had a Caesar, so I don't need to worry about my pelvic floor. But you still carried a baby for 9 months, which put pressure on all of that area. So you think about we get like a piece of net, and in that net we put a watermelon. Now, how much pressure, how far down does that watermelon come? That's what your pelvic floor is. The pelvic floor is that net, and we had the weight of the baby on there, walking, doing all the daily activities, getting up, getting down, all those things. It puts pressure on your pelvic floor, whether you had a vaginal birth or whether you had a C-section. So those things are the things. Do you consider that your pelvic floor still needs to be looked at? If you go, and the other thing to also consider is if you've had, so I have mums coming to me and they go, oh no, my pelvic floor fine. I don't feel any, it feels fine. I don't, and I'll say to them, like, how many kids you have? So I had a mum a couple of years ago. She had 4 kids plus a couple of miscarriages in between. And she was like, no, my pelvic floor's fine. And I was like, you've had 4 kids really, really close together. Can you please just go and get it checked? And she went and got it checked, and she had a prolapse, and she didn't know because she was living with it. So it was just, so it's those things to start to get on top of it, because you can fix all this stuff. It doesn't have to be that way. Now, with our pelvic floor, your pelvic floor can be too tight or too loose, and you need to have it checked to know where it's at. And yes, the best way to get it checked is by having an internal. So that is something to really, really consider, and it needs to be loved and to be cared for. The thing I see all the time is people don't see the importance of the pelvic floor because you can't see it. So people come to me and they say, I don't like my arms. I want to make sure my arms are toned and defined, and, I don't like my stomach, all of those things. But nobody comes and thinks about not many people come. Some people do actually, but not many people come and they don't place that importance on their pelvic floor. I love the way that our doctor had explained it to me, is that if we are injured in a game, let's say we're playing football and you hurt your knee, you are going to get dragged off the field. You are going to have to do some form of rehab and all that before you're okay to play again. Now, we give birth, and as this doctor described, he said it's a football match for your vagina. It is kicked, it is, thrashed around and all those other things in a short, or a long, intense time, whichever birth you give. But then people get on with their lives at normal, and nobody thinks about rehabbing that. So it really does need to be rehabbed. So I urge you to make sure that you go and get it checked. Get it checked by a pelvic floor, by a women's physio, So that's who we need to go to. And you need to find somebody that specializes in that area, and do it as soon as you can after birth. I have so many people that have older kids and never had these things done. And they have problems that they have lived with for 20, 30 years because they thought it was normal. And you do not have to live that way. It's all stuff that can be prevented. It is all stuff that can be changed. There's women that experience pain during sex because that they just think, well, that's what happens after I have a baby. It's then therefore painful. You can have pain during sex after babies because your pelvic floor is too tight, and you just need to do some exercises to loosen it up. So that then takes that horrible experience of painful sex into when your pelvic floor is working properly, it can become that joyous thing instead of it being something that you grudge. There's women that wet themselves and they joke. I see it all the time. They joke about it like as if it's maybe a little badge of honor or something, but wetting yourself is not normal. It is not okay. And it is something that you can change. So regardless of where you are at, how old you are, you can fix it. But don't ignore it, because the older that you get, I'll have people say to me, this is what I get quite a lot. I have people say to me, oh, that's okay. I just, I wet myself when I jump, but I don't jump, but I just don't jump, and that's fine. So that's fine. But as you might be wetting yourself now with your jump, but you don't have to jump. But as you get older, that lining gets thinner and it gets weaker. So it comes from only wetting yourself when you jump to then maybe feeling like you're going to wet yourself all the time, to then actually starting to wet yourself when you are just walking around, But if you did something about it when you just had your baby, or when you realized it, or when you heard this podcast, or when you heard someone else talk about it, if you did something about it, then you could prevent all that further stuff. So do not ignore it. If you leak, if you feel any of those things, it is not okay, and it can be changed. I had a mum who, her kids were grown up. She had 3 boys, they were grown up, and she was having trouble with, she felt like she had to go to the toilet quite often. So she was walking and she would always feel the urge to go to the toilet every and she did my Rebuild Your Core program, and that problem has gone away. So by learning how to strengthen her pelvic floor, strengthen her transverse abs, and because they're connected, all of those things, she now can walk around safe. She doesn't have to feel like she has to go to the toilet anytime. She feels a lot more comfortable, and she has really, really fixed her pelvic floor. I have so many other mums that I'll say to them, they'll go and get their pelvic floor checked, and they'll realize that they have problems and they didn't even know. And by starting to become aware, because if you do have pelvic floor problems, if you just keep ignoring it, it's not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. If you return, I understand this urge to return back to exercise straight after birth, but if you do return too quickly, like this person that went back after 2 weeks, there's postpartum bleeding, and people can bleed for weeks after. If you're exercising too aggressively, it's going to increase your blood flow, which is going to make the bleeding worse. Again, because you may already be exhausted from sleepless nights, getting used to a new baby, the stresses that will come with that. Then you are adding strenuous exercise on top of it. You might be pushing yourself too much, again, leading to more exhaustion and depletion. If you have stitches, then you don't want to tear your stitches or make them worse, so give them time. If you are someone that has a dissecting recti, and you just keep working out and ignoring it, there's lots of other issues that can come from that, like prolapse. So you can have your prolapse in your uterus, your bladder, your bowel. So the prolapse is when they fall out of their normal position. And, there is cases where they protrude outside of the vagina. And a prolapse is it occurs during pregnancy or labor and your delivery, but the added pressure on the pelvic floor and heavy lifting can also cause to your prolapse. So if you try to return back to exercise too quickly, if you start lifting too heavier weights, you can then cause yourself to have more of a prolapse because you are putting too much pressure on there before that part of your body is ready. So that's why I want everybody to really consider these things from returning back to exercise. I'm not saying don't return back to exercise. Returning to exercise was the best thing I did, but I did it slowly and gradually, and I knew my limits, and I made sure that I really worked on my core, my transverse abs, and strengthening those things first. I was somebody that I did have pelvic floor issues, and I did wet myself, and that was something that I had to fix, which meant running was a thing that I could not wait to get back into. It meant I could not do that. And probably for 6 to 9 months after, I could not run until I fixed my pelvic floor. And that was fine. I just focused on other things during that period. So, when you want to return to exercise, again, just aim to start somewhere and steadily increase your exercise. And, again, that's why I said about listening to your body and understanding that it does take time. Now, something to consider, and there's a myth that I hear quite a lot, is about breastfeeding and exercising. And if you breastfeed, if you're breastfeeding and then you return to exercise, then it will affect your oh my God, what's the word? It'll affect your supply. Total mental blank then. So, I don't believe that's true. I think there are things to consider when you are returning to exercise. It is a myth that it will affect your supply. But again, there's things that you need to make sure you're doing in order to help that supply. And it's not the exercise that will stop your supply. It's generally the stress, the fatigue, and not fueling your body correctly that will affect your supply, not the actual exercise. So if you are breastfeeding and you're returning to exercise, some things to consider would be to make sure that you do drink plenty of water to help. that you wear a really supportive bra. So after I had my babies, I went and got a bra fitted because my boobs had changed, and I got I don't really have a chest, but I did have a chest while I was breastfeeding. So I made sure that I got a really supportive bra to help me during those times. Again, we need to, if you're breastfeeding, you need to gradually increase your fitness level. So like you do for anything, we just can't go from 0 to 100. It is recommended to feed or pump before you work out, and it's because that obviously if your breasts are full or good, that can be painful. So to consider that, and really just focus on not overdoing it. So if you're adding massive stress to your body, if you're trying to do some crazy workouts, then the stress and fatigue will reduce your milk supply. But there is so much exercise out there, so many things that you can do that aren't going to put that stress on your body. And it will get you as strong as possible. After I had Charlie, that's when I really got into yoga. I got up every morning and I did 20 minutes of yoga a day. And it was amazing because I couldn't run, but I still kept my morning routine of getting up and doing something. And, I made sure that I did something to help rebuild my core strength every day, if not multiple times through the day in little snippets, the times that I could fit it in. And that is exactly what I put together in the Rebuild Your Core program, because so then you can fit that stuff in when you can. And and you just have to start slowly. We can't go from 0 to 100 straight away. So hopefully this has given you some tips. Please don't be the person laughing about wetting yourself in the gym, or be the person that's too scared to talk about it, because don't be scared. It's really normal. It is not your fault, but speak up and we can fix it. Somebody, look at who you're going to and make sure that they are qualified pre and postnatal. If you are having any pelvic floor problems, go and see a physio. I had another girl that, back things that can happen from weak core, it's not always this case, but from weak core, you can have back problems, you can have neck problems, you can, obviously have hip pain, all of those things. But they're all things that can be changed. They're not things that we need to accept and go, oh, well, this happens because I've had a baby. Oh, well, that's life. It's not life. It is not okay. And my biggest thing is I want to age well. So I need to have this stuff right so that I'm stronger when I get older, because my pelvic floor is going to get thinner and weaker as I get older. My core is going to get weaker as I get older, because that's what happens. Unless you're actively working on your muscle, it is going to start deteriorating. So that's why as a new mum, we all need to be strong. So focus on strength training and, make weight your best friend. So we should be doing some form of strength training. And, as a guide, make sure you're lifting weights the same size as your baby. So, and again, gradually build yourself up onto it. So, so these things are so important to consider. And, if it means that so for me, I couldn't run for 9 months. Now now I look back, 9 months was nothing in the whole scheme of things. I couldn't run the 9 months. I was pregnant, and some people can. I couldn't because I was anemic. So I was anemic, and obviously the running and all that really took it all out of me on top of being pregnant. So that's why I didn't run while I was pregnant. And then, so it took me an additional 9 months after birth before I could run properly again. Now I look back, Charlie's 4, it is nothing. An additional 9 months was nothing. I have no pelvic floor problems. I have a really, really strong core. I have no back pain. I don't have the shoulder pain, neck pain. I have none of that stuff. I'm able to do all activities without any problems because I did that work. So, but 9 months in the whole scheme of things was nothing. If you're someone that ignores it and you try to jump ahead and don't do this little stuff first, the problems that you may have had could become, or possibly would become, lifelong problems. And the things that 20 years down the track, you then can't do things because you're in too much pain, where it would just take maybe 9 months or 5 months or 6 months just after your birth to get these things checked out and to get them sorted. So it's really, really important So please don't ignore them. If you have any questions, if you're unsure of anything, please message me or let me know, because I'm always here to help. And I hope you've learned something today. So I will speak to you all again soon. Okay, bye. Thanks for listening to the Elliott's PT podcast. I hope you have been able to find this information of use to you. If you know someone who might enjoy this podcast, please share it with them. And ensure that you subscribe so you can be the first to know when new podcasts are released. If you have the time to leave a 5-star review, that would be amazing, and it would be greatly appreciated. If you do so, please screenshot and share onto any of our socials and tag us. Then email the screenshot to hello@elliotspt.com and we will send you a free gift to your inbox. Thanks so much. Have an amazing day. Speak soon.